Hello and welcome to MHR's podcast. I'm Alice, and usually we would normally have Andy here with me, but today we've got a very special guest with us. I have Trefor from cybersecurity. Hi, Trefor.
Hey, Alice, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Thank you ever so much for joining me today. It was a very last-minute request, actually. As Andy said, he's studying himself in Europe, and I thought, do you know what? What's a topic that I want to know more about, that I don't know much about? And I'm hoping that we'll find more by the end of the next 10-15 minutes about cybersecurity, because that's where you're based, isn't it, at MHR?
It is indeed, yeah. I'm the Senior Application Security Consultant in the cybersecurity team. We are effectively a security consultancy inside the business, serving basically the customers inside the business.
Very interesting. So in terms of your role then, do you work internally or do you work with our customer base as well?
No, our customers in cybersecurity are the internal staff at MHR, so we serve their needs rather than the actual customers of MHR themselves.
Right. And the reason as well that I wanted to talk about cybersecurity is I think it's probably a very much a topic of interest for a lot of people, because we know the word cybersecurity, but I've got quite limited knowledge, I'm going to admit, that I don't really know kind of what that entails. You know, what's the umbrella of cybersecurity? And probably when we hear the word, it's on the headlines, isn't it? That there's been an attack or that there's some sort of threat out there. So probably the connotations that come with cybersecurity is that it's quite a risky area of the business. But what'll be interesting to find out, actually, just to begin with, is what is cybersecurity?
That's a really good question, and it's almost like the words are misleading, because what we're really talking about is information security. Cyber is a nice glittery little word that we throw in there. I don't know where it's come from, cybernetics maybe, but ultimately we are tasked with all work to do with safeguarding information and the systems that process it. So you just mentioned about it can be seen as quite risky.
Yeah.
It's concerned with the management and control of risk to do with the information that we all process, that we all consume, and that we all work with every day.
Okay, interesting. So you mentioned there that it's to do with keeping information safe. Now, we're at MHR as a HR payroll software company.
Sure.
So what does that actually mean when you talk about keeping information safe?
Well, we are custodians. As this business, we are custodians of the data that our customers trust us with. So it's our job and our responsibility and our duty to look after that and make sure that it's safeguarded, that it's safe, it's protected, that we treat it with the appropriate level of respect and responsibility. It's like anything. If your dad gave you a suitcase full of cash, you wouldn't just leave it outside the front door as some random Amazon driver was delivering your next latest whatever you've ordered from them. You might expect that suitcase to go walking if you did that. And it's very similar. We have data. We need to keep that data secure, not under lock and key so that no one can touch it,
Right.
but secure in a way that allows us to give our customers what they want,
Yeah.
while at the same time making sure people who might want to use that for purposes other than the best of intentions are kept away. And that's really what we're doing
Right,
day in, day out.
interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was actually just speaking to a couple of customers where we've talked about protecting their data, but also kind of ensuring that their data is the best quality. Because that's kind of where I come in with customer success. We always look at the quality of data, but actually you're saying that you're there to almost give a security to that information to say, actually, no, we've got hands safe on it. So I'm just thinking then from our customers' perspective with HR managers, or if you're a business owner, they're probably now thinking, oh, I wonder, what level of security they have. Well, I hope that's what they're thinking now that we're talking about it.
Yeah.
And obviously with that, there probably is a little bit of investigational work that they can do. What sort of thoughts or kind of questions should HR managers or business owners be asking if they want to investigate their cybersecurity?
One of the ones that comes to mind is, where is your data held? Like every business, there's a massive drive to put things in the cloud. But the thing you've got to understand about the cloud and all of these kind of fluffy words around it is that it's ultimately someone else's computer.
Okay.
It doesn't matter what word you call it, it's somewhere else. And if you don't know where that is, and when I don't say just where it is, like, it's with Amazon, you could put your data with Amazon and it could be hosted in a data center on the other side of the world, which puts you in contravention of potentially legislation, which means that you have to keep certain types of data within inside this country.
Okay.
So that's a big one. Where is it stored? How is it stored? Is it encrypted? Is it, if someone were to physically drive up to the computer, put their hands on the disk drive and take it out, would they be able to interact with it? Would they be able to read it? So making sure that it's safe from prying eyes if someone got to the underlying bits of the machinery.
Right.
And then what you do with that data, how you process it, because for data to be useful, you don't just stick it in a box and put it in the corner and go, all right, the data's safe over there, it's fine. You've got to actually use it. So our product's people first. People post on it. We've got payroll stuff on there about leave. All of that stuff has to be processed. It has to be worked with. Making sure that where you're sending it, you've done your due diligence to see what it's actually doing. It's not sending stuff off to a marketing company to track another business, how it's using it. You've got to keep an eye on where all that stuff is at all times.
And just a point I picked up on there, you mentioned something about data centers probably being in another country.
Sure.
So is there different legislation around the world then to do with data protection?
Yes, there are, yeah. Granted, we are benefiting somewhat from our relationship with the EU, whatever status that may or may not be now, because we have the GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulations. For instance, they don't exist in the United States, and they're playing catch-up. Interestingly, in the States, California is pretty much the leader in setting federal-level legislation. What happens in California happens largely across the rest of the US. And they are looking at what the Europeans have done and are going, oh, well, we should be doing that. And so you're seeing this move in other parts of the world to do the same thing. Not necessarily true in nation states such as China, Russia. They have a different attitude towards how they safeguard data because it's very centrally controlled. Then that's how they manage it. But yeah, there's a different attitude depending on where in the world you're looking at it from.
Oh, very interesting. So then another point I picked up on as you're talking about kind of things to consider was a little bit kind of about where your own personal data is going. So you talked about kind of marketing purposes, and I can't remember the other one you mentioned, but instantly in my head I remembered there's always this kind of opt-out button you get on the bottom of emails, or unsubscribe.
Yes, there is,
and I'm forever pressing that button.
Yeah.
So is there something that kind of on an individual basis that maybe we should be a little bit more aware about to do with our own cybersecurity then?
Yes, but this is an incredibly tricky area because the theory is if you press the unsubscribe button, to use your example, and you should have a reasonable expectation that you should be unsubscribed, that you won't be bothered by that anymore.
Yeah.
But on the other end of that, marketeers thrive on data. Yeah. And they don't necessarily always arrange things to be in the way that you might expect them. So you might unsubscribe from the email that you've received, but in the process of you doing that, to receive those emails in the first place, you might have signed up to the emails of the overriding company that was sending you the emails in the first place.
Interesting, right,
so
okay.
So the point being, if you can do anything, is just try to open your awareness to how valuable your data is to other people. It may be just a throwaway to you. You know your date of birth off by hand. You may know your national insurance number off by heart. Those things are almost like inconsequential to you. They're important, but they're inconsequential to people who make their bread and butter and maybe their fortune out of that data. It's incredibly valuable in aggregate. So just be aware of how it's being used. When someone's prompting you for something and the product you are receiving in exchange is free, you are the product.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
there
is nothing free. It's you are giving your data in exchange for a product. You are the product.
There's a statement there, isn't it?
Yeah.
You are the product. But no, that's actually kind of something to really take away, I think, because obviously we spoke about kind of the business managers there and the HR managers, what they could be aware of.
Sure.
But again, as individuals, I think we do need that awareness, don't we, about what we're being involved with. And at the end of the day, I think we mentioned at the beginning who's the controller of data. And ultimately, we have a lot of information that is personal to us, but we do have to share it. We're a HR business here, so we know what we put on our own system as an employee of a business. But ultimately, I think that's where the responsibility is, isn't it? That we are relying that the company that we're giving our information to is going to host it and hold it responsibly.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's why it's very important that I see this every day. The amount of due diligence we do on the partners that we work with,
Yeah.
and people who come to us to sort of work with us with the customer's data is extraordinary. We jump through hoops to make sure that we're working with people who hold our stuff in it with kid gloves, then treat it with the respect it deserves.
Yeah, and I think you got some other work going on as well with the studio here, which is I've heard there might be a cybersecurity show coming in possibly later this year.
There might be, yes, yeah. We've been doing some work to produce a show where we explore different aspects and topics in a slightly more sort of deeper, broader manner around cybersecurity. So recently, for instance, we've been working to produce some stuff about artificial intelligence and how it can have an effect on your business, your wider life, and how we look at that from both defending that in cybersecurity and how
Right.
attackers might use it to do things that perhaps you really wouldn't want them to do.
Okay, so if someone's interested just to know a little bit more about a
Yeah.
deeper dive into cybersecurity, they should be keeping an eye out then for that show coming out.
I will say it's not super technical,
Yeah.
but it's deep enough that I hope that it gives a kind of a decent view of the field without having to sort of drill down into the earth over it.
Interesting. I think you're hosting the show, aren't you? And then who else do you have on it?
I am indeed. We've got the head of our cybersecurity operations centre, Sean Hand, and also our CISO, Will North, who Will is extremely knowledgeable in AI at the moment. He's doing lots of work on it, so it's very interesting to hear the things he has to say. Yeah, he's very sharp guy.
Brilliant. Well, that's one for you guys to keep an eye out then. I'm sure we'll be having you back on the podcast so we can promote it a little bit more.
Bless you. Thank you.
But just to kind of leave a final few thoughts then, and maybe kind of promote a little bit of what might be on that show. Do you have any maybe 3 top tips that you could give to HR managers or business managers about their cybersecurity?
Yeah, and some of it's incredibly boring. I'm sorry to say.
It's never boring.
The thing is, if you get involved in the tech space, you'll have people trying to sell you all sorts of very high-priced stuff. The 3 top tips for cybersecurity are incredibly basic, and they're all to do with what we call cyber hygiene. And it's boring stuff, but it's so important. Making sure that you have strong passwords, making sure that you've got multi-factor authentication, and just generally being that point about being aware of what you're doing with data, whether it's yours or someone else's. If you can do those 3 things, you're already doing like 60, 70, 80% of the work.
Right.
Fancy tooling is great. It feels good to spend lots of money on something with lots of flashy lights, but ultimately, the amount of stuff that hackers take advantage of, it normally comes down to sending you a phishing email and stealing your password.
Right.
So,
Okay. So
yeah.
awareness is a big thing there.
Yeah, those emails that you get asking you, the Nigerian prince email that was so popular 10 years ago, that's evolved, and where the direction that's going is truly frightening. So always just be aware when someone's offering something to you. Maybe you should think twice and make sure that you've got a strong password.
Thank you. No, that's great. Thank you ever so much for passing on those top tips.
Bless you.
And thank you for joining on the podcast today. We wish Andy a very happy holiday. But it's been really interesting to speak about cybersecurity. I know that I've definitely learned a few things there. And for everyone else that's interested, there will be more information on our website. They have a cybersecurity show coming up later this year, so keep your eyes peeled in your inboxes. And again, thank you ever so much for joining. And we'll see you very soon.
Thank you, Alice.
Bye.
Bye.